From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome tonight. President Tinubu reiterates no ransom was paid for Oyo kidnapped victims released as Olubadan of Ibadan land. Oba Rashidi Ladoja describes the rescue as Nigeria's anti-kidnapping turning point. Ahead of the 2027 general elections, Chief of Defense Training Rear Admiral Abolade Ogunleye reaffirms the armed forces' commitments to safeguarding Nigeria's territorial integrity and democratic process. National Peace Committee urges politicians and stakeholders in the Osun governorship election to refrain from violence, hate speech and misconduct before, during and after voting. And Egypt comes under attack for the first time as the escalating US-Iran conflict widens, drawing more countries into the crisis and heightening regional security concerns. On sports news tonight, UEFA threatens to boycott FIFA tournaments if Gianni Infantino goes ahead with his proposal to sell off a stake in the FIFA World Cup.
In on business news, Central Bank of Nigeria lowers yield on its one-year Treasury bill following strong demand at its latest auction.
From the nation's capital, Finance Minister Professor Taiwo Oyedele says federal government's developing framework to reduce capital costs without subsidies.
President Bola Tinubu has reiterated that his administration did not pay ransom for the release of the children and teachers kidnapped from Orire community in Ogbomoso, Oyo State. The president made this clear when he received a delegation of traditional rulers from the state led by the Olubadan of Ibadan land at the presidential villa in Abuja. The Olubadan, Oba Rashidi Ladoja, said the president's action in Oyo is a turning point in the issue of kidnapping in Nigeria.
You have made a turning point in the issue of kidnapping in Nigeria. The people of Oyo State said, are we going to become another Chibok? Is it going to be a perennial issue? But as I said, it has not brought a turning point in the issue of kidnapping in Nigeria, not only in Oyo State. Because people now know that we now have a president who will not negotiate from the position of witness with any kidnapper. So thank you very much for the opportunity. We are really very grateful. But let me also advise, on behalf of my colleagues, that you should not please abandon that forest. You have been able to send away all the kidnappers, all the people that were there, that were threats to life and property of people of your state. You have succeeded in getting them out of the place. But please, let us have the presence of the security agencies there, so that they do not regather.
In his response, the president said his administration is learning and responding positively to defeat terrorism and banditry in Nigeria. He explained the addition of state police and forest guards will also enhance security at the grassroots, even as he called on state governors to do more.
Your Excellency.
Open our eyes, challenge us to examine and re-examine our architecture, our strategy, our map and operations. And you would have seen we're giving a geographical and numerical answer to the challenges. We are now moving to 12 divisions to shorten the response time, to give, that response time the teeth that is needed for us to defeat terrorism and banditry. We refused to negotiate for ransom, negotiate. And we said, no deal. We are not going to negotiate with criminals. They committed murder, and we were ready to finish with their families and members of their own communities. So you have governed before as the governor. You need to help us communicate to these governors. Today, the economy of operation is high. They should do more instead of fly over where there's no numeric traffic, build the roads and arteries, network to really enhance the quality of life and the accessibility of the security agencies to penetrate those areas.
Ahead of the general elections coming next year, the Chief of Defense Training, Rear Admiral Abolade Ogunleye, is reaffirming the unflinching commitment of the armed forces of Nigeria to secure the nation by protecting her integrity and its democratic process. Speaking in Abuja at a one-day seminar on the role of the armed forces of Nigeria during the 2027 general elections, Admiral Ogunleye, who represented the Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyede, says military personnel played a vital role in the just concluded off-cycle and by-elections in Ekiti, Kano, Kebbi, Rivers, Nasarawa, Enugu, and Ondo states.
Preparations for a smooth and violence-free general elections is in top gear as the Defense Headquarters hold this seminar in Abuja with personnel of the various services in attendance. The need for all military personnel deployed for election duties in the country to be impartial and act in accordance with extant guidelines is the reason for this seminar.
The conduct of general election in Nigeria usually presents a multifaceted security challenge with the presence of various security breaches by non-state actors aimed at undermining the electoral process. This creates a hostile environment that is unconducive for the conduct of free, fair, and credible election.
In his address, the Director of Legal Affairs at the Independent National Electoral Commission, who represented the chairman of the commission, harps on the need for military personnel to remain apolitical.
Election security must therefore remain proactive rather than reactive, combining intelligence-led operations, effective interagency coordination, strategic communication, and timely deployment of appropriate security resources.
The Chief of Defense Training at the Defense Headquarters, Rear Admiral Abolade Ogunleye, who represented the Chief of Defense Staff, observes that the seminar is timely and critical to re-emphasize the non-negotiable stance of the armed forces on adherence to the principles of impartiality, neutrality, and respect for human rights.
As we approach the electioneering period with a steady increase in political activities, it is imperative that the armed forces of Nigeria personnel are constantly reminded of their roles to ensure the maintenance of strict neutrality, professionalism, and adherence to international human rights provisions.
The seminar, which attracted participants from various commands of the armed forces and the Nigeria Police Force, has its theme, the role of the armed forces of Nigeria in conducting free, fair, and credible elections, Nigeria's 2027 general elections in perspective.
9 persons abducted by suspected terrorists have been rescued, while 3 bandits were killed in a coordinated operation by joint security forces in Ekiti local government area of Kwara State. In a statement by the Chief Press Secretary to the Ekiti Local Government Council Chairman, Dada Sunday, the rescue operation was conducted by Kwara State recruited forest guards in conjunction with operatives of the Department of State Services, local hunters, and vigilantes. According to security sources, the victims were abducted from Iju community after the local market and were being moved through the bush toward Niger State before the security team intercepted them. A member of the Kwara Forest Guards explained that the team had been on intelligence-driven bush combing when they engaged the terrorists, even as the chief security officer of the Ekiti local government, Agbemuko Gabriel, commended the Forest Guards for their efforts. In the meantime, authorities say bush combing and joint patrols will continue in Kwara South and border communities to prevent further attacks on farming communities. 2,809 illicit, decommissioned and unserviceable small arms and light weapons have all been destroyed by the federal government as it reaffirms its resolve to arrest the proliferation of illegal weapons fueling insecurity across the country. Now, speaking at the event in Abuja, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, who was represented by the administrator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, Dennis Otuaro, says terrorism, insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, communal clashes and other violent crimes are being sustained by the widespread availability of illicit arms. According to the NSA, every weapon recovered and permanently destroyed represents a threat eliminated from society. The destruction carried out by the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons now brings the cumulative number of weapons destroyed by the center to about 19,000.
The destruction of approximately 2,819 illicit, decommissioned and unserviceable small arms and light weapons, bringing the center's cumulative total since inception to about 19,000 destroyed, is no small achievement. It reflects sustained institutional commitments, and it deserves the recognition of every Nigerian concerned about the security of our nation. From where I sit, coordinating our national security architecture, the connection between illicit arms and the violence that has troubled our country is direct and unmistakable. Terrorism, insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, and communal conflicts are all sustained by the ready availability of illegal weapons. Every weapon recovered by our gallant armed forces, police, and other security services, and every weapon that eventually finds its way into an exercise such as this represents a threat permanently neutralized.
Lasting peace and security in the southeast remain critical to Nigeria's unity, economic growth, and national development. That's coming from the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris. Speaking at this year's Southeast Regional Security Summit in Umuahia, the Abia state capital, the minister stressed that when the southeast is secure, Nigeria becomes stronger, even as he called for greater collaboration among government security agencies, traditional rulers, and other stakeholders to tackle security challenges. The minister also reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to protecting lives and property throughout the country.
The Southeast is renowned for its enterprise, for its innovation, and for its resilience. Its people have made very great contributions to our country's economic development. The federal government of Nigeria, therefore, remains fully committed to ensuring lasting peace and security across this region. For this reason, the federal government remains firmly committed to ensuring that every community across this region enjoys lasting peace and security. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, has consistently affirmed that protecting lives and property is the foremost responsibility of government. Guided by this principle, the Renewed Hope administration has adopted a comprehensive security strategy that combines military operations, intelligence-led policing, judicial accountability, economic development, and strategic partnership. Therefore, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has since May of 2023 strengthened the capabilities of our armed forces, and we have just heard from the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, that Mr. President has expanded the divisions from 8 to 12, all in an attempt to ensure that every nook and cranny of this country deserves to have the security that all require so that we can live in peace.
In part two, after the break, the National Peace Committee urges politicians and stakeholders in the Osun governorship election to refrain from violence, hate speech and misconduct before, during and after voting. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, you are watching the News at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Tinubu reiterates no ransom was paid for Oyo kidnapped victims' release as Olubadon of Ibadan land, Oba Rashidi Ladoja, describes the rescue as Nigeria's anti-kidnapping turning point. Ahead of next year's general elections, Chief of Defense Training Rear Admiral Abolade Ogunleye reaffirms the armed forces' commitment to safeguarding Nigeria's territorial integrity and democratic process. National Peace Committee urges politicians and stakeholders in the Osun governorship poll to refrain from violence, hate speech and misconduct before, during and after voting. And Egypt comes under attack for the first time as the escalating US-Iran conflict widens, drawing more countries into the crisis and heightening regional security concerns. The Public Complaints Commission is advocating closer collaboration between the National Assembly and accountability institutions to help improve access to administrative justice, strengthen legislative oversight, and enhance public confidence in governance. The Chief Ombudsman of the Public Complaints Commission, Mr. Bashir Abubakar, made the call at a retreat for the House of Representatives Committee on Public Petitions, supported by the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center and the European Union in Abuja. Our correspondent, Benny Ark, reports.
Of parliamentary accountability.
The House of Representatives Committee on Public Petition is holding a two-day retreat to review its performance, strengthen legislative oversight, and improve the petition process as a tool for promoting accountability and administrative justice. The retreat is supported by the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC, with funding from the European Union.
The executive is not releasing funds for constituency projects.
Executive Director of the Center, Mr. Clement Nwankwo, says the retreat provides an opportunity for stakeholders to review the committee's work, share experiences, and identify practical reforms to strengthen the public petitions process.
Public Complaints Commission is one of the only, I think, 4 laws that are specifically entrenched in the Constitution, which shows the importance of the public being able to get administrative recourse for justice or to justice in their matters.
Chief Ombudsman of the Public Complaints Commission, Mr. Bashir Abubakar, called for stronger collaboration between the Commission and the House Committee on Public Petitions to improve access to justice and public accountability.
The effectiveness of any citizen redress mechanism depends largely on the quality of collaboration among institutions with complementary responsibilities. Such sustained collaboration between the National Assembly and the Public Complaints Commission will not only enhance access to justice, but also strengthen accountability, improve institutional responsiveness, and reinforce public confidence in democratic governance.
The chairman of the House Committee on Public Petitions, Mr. Bitrus Lauri, says the retreat will help the committee assess its performance, set clear priorities, and improve its oversight role in addressing petitions from the public.
This committee has a lot of responsibility, and we are striving to make sure that public trust in this committee through fair, transparent, and citizen-focused dispute resolution is attained.
The outcome of the retreat is expected to strengthen cooperation among key institutions, improve the handling of public petitions, and advance accountability and good governance. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
The National Peace Committee has appealed to politicians and other stakeholders in the Osun governorship election to shun violent acts or speeches and any misconduct that could be a threat to the peace of the state before, during, and after the election. This appeal was made in Osogbo, the Osun state capital, by the chairman of the committee, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, during the signing of the peace accord ahead of the August 15, 2026 poll in the state.
Leaders as well as traditional and religious leaders and other stakeholders gather for the peace accord ceremony in Osogbo, the Osun state capital. Chairman of the National Peace Committee, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, represented by Cardinal John Anaikon, says the accord must go beyond the ceremonial exercise, urging all political actors to honor their commitment to peace before, during, and after the election. He also asked security agencies to remain professional and ensure the protection of lives, property, and the electoral process.
In the name of the National Peace Committee, I am making my special appeal to all the political party members here present to abide by the spirit and the letter of the accord that you will now sign. During this period, until August 15th, let there be peace.
In their goodwill messages, INEC Chairman Professor Joash Amopiton and the Inspector General of Police Olatunji Disu, represented by the Assistant Inspector General of Police Zone 11 Olabode Fashiba, reaffirmed their commitment to a credible, peaceful, and secure election.
Today, as 14 political parties prepare to enter the field in Osun State, we are reminded that this document is not a mere administrative ceremony or photo opportunity. It is a moral treaty signed before the citizens of this state and the global community.
The police, being the leading organization in internal security, we have placed adequate security on the ground to ensure free, fair, credible, and transparent election is being held in Osun State.
Meanwhile, the Accord Party's governorship candidate, Governor Ademola Adeleke, has raised concerns over the security situation in the state, alleging that some of his party supporters have been subjected to attacks and intimidation.
In the last 3 months, we have lost 8 party members with more than 20 injured in gun attacks. There's no single prosecution or active arrest to date.
The ceremony ends with the governorship candidates, the INEC chairman, and the representative of the Inspector General of Police signing the peace accord under the supervision of members of the National Peace Committee.
A crisis may be brewing in the health sector as the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors has given the federal government until Monday, August the 10th this year to implement the terms of a previously signed Memorandum of Understanding or face a total, comprehensive and indefinite nationwide strike across public health facilities. The ultimatum was issued at the end of the association's week-long National Executive Council meeting held in Gombe State, where delegates expressed concern over what they described as the worsening state of Nigeria's healthcare system. Some of the issues raised include the alleged intimidation and poor treatment of resident doctors at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, outstanding salary arrears, deteriorating working conditions, among other issues.
The NEC strongly condemned the persistent assault, harassment, intimidation, and violent attacks against doctors and demanded immediate and concrete measures to curb this menace. The Council further called for the development and implementation of a national healthcare workers assault prevention and response protocol, as well as the initiation of the necessary legislative processes to criminalize and effectively address assaults on healthcare workers nationwide. The NEC demanded the immediate payment of all outstanding 25-35% comments upward review arrears owed to medical doctors without further delay. The NEC demanded the immediate payment of the outstanding 19 months professional allowance arrears to all affected medical doctors. Number 5, the NEC demanded the immediate payment of all outstanding salary and promotion arrears owed to doctors across federal health institutions. Therefore, the NEC resolved to embark, by way of this declaration, a total and comprehensive industrial strike commencing at 8 a.m. on Monday, 10th August 2026. Should the federal government fail to satisfactorily address the outstanding issues contained in this communique before the expiration of this stipulated timeline. 8 a.m. Monday, 10th of August 2026. The NEC reaffirmed its commitment to constructive engagement and dialogue, but reiterated that the welfare of resident doctors and the survival of the Nigerian healthcare system remains non-negotiable.
On the flip side of the health sector, Nigeria has secured nearly $500 million from Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance's support for vaccines and primary health care over the 2026 to 2030 period. This follows high-level discussions between the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Mohammed Pate, and Gavi Chief Executive Officer Dr. Sania Nishtar in Abuja. Speaking during the meeting, Professor Pate said Nigeria is strengthening its partnership with Gavi to accelerate immunization and expand primary health care services. He welcomed Gavi's country-focused reforms, including the introduction of a predictable 5-year funding envelope, noting that the nearly $500 million allocation will enable Nigeria to plan more effectively and deliver life-saving vaccines to more children and vulnerable populations.
When you came very early in your tenure, Nigeria being the first country that you visited, we took that as a mark of commitment to help advance our interests, but also as a representation of your overall intent for countries in our region. And you listened carefully. You also articulated reforms that we followed from a distance, but now we've seen the manifestation of those reforms, meaning that you listened and you also acted on what you've heard from the countries. That's an important message that you have conveyed to us, that countries are important. They are partners in this effort. They have the responsibility to ensure they protect their children, women, and almost everyone with the miracle of vaccines. We're a large country, and the fact that you are proposing almost $500 million over the next 5 years for Nigeria's vaccine effort, I think speaks volumes. For us, that is another impetus for us to do more with our domestic financing to ensure that we secure vaccines, but also we ensure that they are delivered.
We are here to laud and commend your leadership, and we are here to understand what else we can do to assist you. So these are the 5 objectives of our visit. To recap, number 1, to reaffirm our support. Number 2, to explain to you how your voices have really mattered, not just for Nigeria, but for the continent, and to go over the details of the country letter if you wish. Number 3, to assist you in overcoming any fiscal challenges in the spirit of partnership. And number 4, to have conversations about Project Hope and the final decisions pending. And number 5, polio and routine immunization.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Central Bank of Nigeria lowers yield on its 1-year Treasury bill following strong demand at its latest auction. That's on Business News. Please join us again. Indeed, we still have more news, and this time we head to the nation's capital. Of course, Millicent Walker is standing by with the latest from our Abuja studios. Over to you, Millicent.
That's right. Many thanks, Ayatunde. Well, you might be wondering how savings from the removal of fuel and foreign exchange subsidies have been utilized. Well, according to the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Professor Taiwo Oyedele, a detailed account will soon be published. Professor Oyedele was responding to questions on whether Nigerians were seeing the benefits of the economic reforms introduced by the Bola Tinubu administration at the 7th Emerging Markets Forum. Our correspondent Sarah Chimagu has more.
It's the second day of the 7th Africa Emerging Markets Forum, where conversation centers around rebuilding economies in the face of global shocks. The day commences with presentations on how cities can help change the economic trajectories of emerging countries. And then deep conversations on Nigeria.
Because it affects the price.
The World Bank chief economist sets the stage. He raises questions on why poverty and unemployment still persists.
Tell us what your plans are to translate the still monetary stability that Nigeria has achieved over the last 3 years into convert this stability into a broadly based growth that will help Nigeria's poor, its farmers, and its youth. But not through fiscal transfers, but through agricultural growth and job creation.
The Minister of Finance responds.
The reform itself was a reset. We were living in fiscal illusions. So we needed to stop deceiving ourselves so the country can move forward. And that reset meant that income levels in real terms will fall. And that would increase poverty. But the good news is that the numbers for 2025 in dollar terms, real per capita income growth was nearly 10%. That makes Nigeria one of the fastest countries in lifting people out of poverty. We intend to sustain that.
He goes further to explain plans for the days ahead.
We have to mobilize revenue. Revenue optimization is a priority. We actually think that if Nigeria were to be generating the right amount of revenue, even interest rates would be lower. Naira will be stronger and steady.
The conversation then moves into a plenary session with focus on food and price volatility, a major concern in emerging economies.
Access to market is actually a precursor to solving some of the problems we have in food, especially when it comes to food inflation.
Ownership. In anything that we are doing, if we don't own the ideas, if we don't internalize what we are doing, we fail. So first thing I would advise the young generation is trust yourself.
The message is clear. Desperate times calls for desperate measures, and this is one key message policymakers here are looking to take up in the days ahead. Sarah Achimugu, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the federal government says the Dangote petroleum refinery and petrochemicals is central to Nigeria's drive to achieve a $1 trillion economy. The Minister of State for Industry, Mr. John Eno, stated this during a visit to Africa's largest industrial facility in Ibeju-Lekki, Lagos. He also described the refinery as a major catalyst for industrial growth and economic transformation.
The Minister of State for Industry, accompanied by a high-level delegation, is welcomed by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Dangote Petroleum Refinery, Mr. David Bird. After a brief interaction, the august visitor is taken to see some key parts of the complex, such as the single-point mooring SPM, the Dangote Port Complex, the fertilizer plant, and the ultra-modern control room. 3% was to answer other components. Following the tour, the leadership of Dangote Industries expresses optimism about Nigeria's industrial future.
I'm more hopeful for our country than ever. And I think, honestly, let us just continue with very good policies.
Our famous gasoline is going to US, our jet is going to Europe,
And our diesel is going all over the world because we are able to meet Euro 5, Euro 6 grade.
The minister seizes the opportunity to thank Alhaji Aliko Dangote for his support towards the inauguration of the Nigeria industrial policy.
For me, the first leg of this visit is to say very profoundly how grateful me and my team are. Alhaji was with us from beginning to the end. From beginning to the end. His presence elevated that launch and gave it the prominence it now had.
Responding, the president of the Dangote Group says the federal government's target of $1 trillion gross domestic product is achievable.
We took out from that vision of 1 trillion to carve our own vision, which we have seen that, yes, we can do $100 billion out of that 1 trillion, which is 10%, and it's achievable. And I must also thank His Excellency, Mr. President, for appointing people like Senator, commitment that we have from him, I can tell you, is none compared to the rest.
The more a country, adds value, to its products and productivity, the more that country gets international respect and all of that. I mean, for us as a ministry and as a government, the Dangote refinery has come to make that for Nigeria. Get Nigeria the respect that Nigeria now enjoys.
This visit by the Minister of State for Industry is seen by stakeholders as an important outcome of a synergy between the federal government and the Dangote Group, expected to boost Nigeria's industrial capacity and job creation.
Back in the FCT, where the Minister Osun has been explaining the constraints of completing the Millennium Tower project, which began in 2006 under former President Olusegun Obasanjo. According to him, the financial requirements needed to complete the project is over 400 million naira, which is above the current FCT administration's statutory budget. While commending the concept of the project, the minister adds that he's talking to the president to consider its completion. Stalled for over 20 years, the Millennium Tower project is located at Abuja's Central Business District with a 170-meter architectural design expected to be the tallest building in the country when completed.
I'm happy. I can tell you I'm highly elated with the level of job, with the level of construction, and the quality that we have seen. And every right-thinking person in this country, in this city, will agree that indeed the Tribus administration has transformed Abuja to a world-class city. It's a national project, and I believe that it's one project that government should reconsider. Should be a tourist center project. The capital involved is too huge for the FCT to have this one statutory budget. We have discussed with the contractor. Remember that project was awarded under Obasanjo regime. As I speak to you, it's not less than 300 to 400 billion naira that the contractor is talking about. And if you look at it, how do we carry such project? It means that every other project that we have will have to be abandoned. But we are still talking to the president that we should consider it as a national project.
Well, it's over now to Will Ebong with the best of business.
Thank you, Millicent. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has lowered the yield on its one-year Treasury bill after strong investor demand at its latest primary market auction. Investors subscribed 3.38 trillion naira for the 364-day bill, almost 7 times the 500 billion naira offered. The heavy demand pushed the stop rate down by 31 basis points to 17.35%, while rates on the 91-day and 182-day bills were left unchanged. The result signals strong liquidity in the financial system and continued investor appetite for government securities. securities, even as yields begin to moderate. The auction may also reduce the government's borrowing costs if demand remains strong. Seplat Energy has agreed to sell a 10% working interest in its joint venture with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited for about $281.6 million, and that's subject to regulatory approvals. Following the deal, Seplat's stake in the joint venture will fall from 40% to 30%, while NNPCL's interest will increase to 70%. However, Seplat will remain the operator of the joint venture and will continue to own its subsidiary, Seplat Energy Producing Nigeria Unlimited. Seplat says the proceeds will be used to reduce debt and enhance shareholder returns. The company adds that the transaction forms part of its capital allocation strategy and will support stronger cash flows while maintaining its focus on developing one of Nigeria's most strategic oil and gas assets. The transaction is expected to be completed in the second half of the year. Now, Chairman of First Holdco, Femi Otedola, has further strengthened his position in the financial services group after acquiring about 1.77 billion additional shares worth more than 222 billion naira, or that's about $160 million. Now, the latest acquisition executed through his investment vehicle, Calvados Global Services Limited, raises his total holding to nearly 11.96 billion shares, valued at about $1.07 billion. The purchase increases the stake to about 26%, further consolidating his position as the largest shareholder in First Holdco. The milestone makes Otedola the first Nigerian investor to build a billion-dollar equity stake in a local bank through open market share purchases. It also comes as First Holdco has emerged as Nigeria's most valuable banking group by market capitalization, overtaking its peers following a strong rally in its share price. Now, First Holdco shares closed on Tuesday at 127 naira, up from 47 naira 90 kobo at the end of 2025, a gain of about 165%. The company's market cap also surged, supported by both the sharp rise in its share price and its recapitalization program, which increased the number of shares in issue. Under Nigerian takeover regulations, a shareholder who acquires more than 30% of a listed company must make a mandatory offer to other shareholders. With a stake of about 26%, Mr. Otedola remains below that threshold and has repeatedly described his share purchases as a long-term investment in the growth of First Holdco rather than a bid for full ownership. And with that, we're checking with the domestic equities market, which extended losing streak in the penultimate trading session of the week. Larry Williams has more.
Hello and welcome to the stock market report. So profit taking continued today at Custom Street. I will see the all-share index down 0.65%. That's for the Thursday close, but still holding on to the 245,000 level. Market cap sitting at 158 trillion naira. Let's look at what's happened so far in the month of July. Month to date, 6.85% up. That's for the all-share index for the whole month of July. Not looking bad at all right there, even coming from a month of June, that there was a lot of profit taking, so not bad. For the sectors that we track now, the run on insurance stocks, that paused today with a big drop of over 2%. The only stock spared was Cornerstone Insurance PLC and Sovereign Trust Insurance PLC. Then we see the banking counter there, 2.04% down. So it's mostly red also for the consumer goods counter. So, Will, I guess the insurance party ended today.
Thank you, Larry. That's one party we'll keep watching to see if there'll be a rematch for. But let's check out the closing numbers for other major stock markets around the world. And that's business news. I'm Will Ivangus. Back to Aya for more on the news at 10.
Thank you, Will. Egypt has been struck for the first time as the U.S.-Iran conflict pulls in more countries. Meanwhile, Tehran has vowed to retaliate against the latest U.S. strikes and ensure continued closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Here's Simon Pusey from our London studio with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
The US military says it has completed a heavy wave of strikes against Iran in retaliation for Tuesday's attempted ballistic missile attacks on American forces.
We're going to be hitting them very hard because it's our turn to hit them.
CENTCOM said it hit dozens of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps targets in response to Iran's firing on US bases in Jordan and at ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Iran has vowed to punish the aggressor, warning any country seen as helping Washington would face a harsh response, reigniting fears of a wider conflict. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said an object that crashed into a field in eastern Poland in the early hours of Thursday was probably a Russian missile. The unidentified object caused a 10-meter-wide crater a short distance from the village of Tarnowa Kolonia, around 100 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, during a Russian attack on the city of Lviv. Ukraine's acting foreign minister said a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile had crossed into Poland as part of Russia's massive strike against Ukraine, violating NATO airspace. The Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has been admitted to an intensive care unit in the capital Kampala after collapsing and losing consciousness during his treason trial. The 70-year-old had been in detention since November 2024. His lead lawyer was arrested last month and charged with allegedly failing to report acts of treason. The visibly frail politician was objecting to state lawyers being appointed to represent him when he fell ill, prompting prison guards to rush him to hospital. Thousands of people have been evacuated on the Greek island of Crete as wildfires fanned by strong winds hit tourist resorts and villages. Around 8,000 people were evacuated overnight in Rethmano, where gusts have reached 125 kilometers per hour. Meanwhile, some of the hundreds of thousands of people driven from their homes by wildfires in Spain and France are finally being allowed back, with authorities saying the country's worst blazes in history are beginning to stabilize. Around 24,000 of the roughly 63,000 people evacuated from Madrid, Toledo and Avila have now returned, though 8 major fires are still burning.
Madam President.
The UN Security Council has begun straw polls to narrow down the 7 candidates hoping to succeed Antonio Guterres as Secretary General when his term ends this year. The field includes 2 African candidates, former Senegalese President Macky Sall and veteran Ugandan diplomat Olora Otunu, alongside the former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet. The unresolved wars in Iran and Ukraine dominated last week's public town hall with the contenders in New York.
No volverán a haber elecciones.
Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, who has been in power since 2007, has proposed extending his presidential term by another year. The government-controlled National Assembly is expected to approve the extension in September. It is part of a proposed constitutional reform, which also includes plans to bar members of the opposition deemed by the government to be traitors or coup plotters from running for office. The 80-year-old's rule has become increasingly authoritarian, with political opponents jailed, sent into exile and stripped of their citizenship. Ugandan opposition politician Hamid Mwanga Kivumbi has resurfaced after 19 days missing, telling a court that he was blindfolded and beaten by his captors throughout his disappearance. The former Butumbala MP was dumped at a police station before being taken to Butumbala Magistrates Court, charged with inciting violence and holding an unlawful assembly, and remanded until the 11th of August. He vanished the day after being granted bail on separate terrorism charges. Rights groups had accused the military of forcibly disappearing him. And an Indian yoga instructor called Kamal Kaloy has set his 3rd Guinness World Record, this time for the most underwater push-ups in a single breath, 86 of them. He trained for 2 years for the feat, which he performed in a pool in Vietnam, diving down and pumping out as many push-ups as he could before surfacing for air. It adds to his existing records for underwater yoga poses and air rings.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. European football governing body UEFA says it will boycott the World Cup if FIFA pressed ahead with its private investor plan. On Tuesday, football's world governing body FIFA announced plans to create a commercial subsidiary to run its biggest events, such as the World Cup and Club World Cup. Under the proposal, private investors will be allowed to acquire stakes in the company, but will remain minority shareholders. It hopes to raise up to $4.2 billion based on a valuation of $20 billion for the FIFA Forward Enterprise initiative. If approved, the project could provide each of FIFA's 211 member associations with a one-off payment of $20 million in early 2027 and increase their funding allocation for the 2027 to 2030 cycle from $8.0 million to $20 million. Not the race she wished for. 2022 Commonwealth gold medalist Osun finished third and settled for bronze in the women's 100 meters hurdles at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, Scotland this evening. Bahamas' Davine Charlton stormed to gold in 12.33 seconds, beating Megan Simmons of Jamaica, who clocked 12.41 seconds. Our last track final of the night at the EDF Scotstoun, and a flawless run from Davine Charlton sees the Bahamas athlete stormed to victory in the women's 100 meters hurdles in 12.33 seconds, beating Megan Simmons into silver. Otobi, who took gold at the last two games, had to settle for bronze, clocking 12.60 seconds. Earlier, Team Nigeria's Chukwuebuka Enekwechi has been crowned Commonwealth Games champion after producing a winning throw of 21.07 meters in the men's shot put final in Glasgow, Scotland. Now the African champion edged New Zealand's Tom Walsh, who claimed silver with 21.03 meters, while England's Scott Lincoln took bronze with 20.99 meters. It's another outstanding achievement for Enekwechi, who adds a Commonwealth Games gold medal to his growing list of international honours and delivers another gold for Team Nigeria in Glasgow. The president of the Nigeria Weightlifting Federation, Ibrahim Abdul, has commended the resilience of Team Nigeria weightlifters at this year's Commonwealth Games, having clinched 3 gold medals in the women's 53 kg, 58 kg events and the men's 71 kg. Mr. Abdul told our sports correspondent, Austin Okun-Akpan in Glasgow, it's exciting to see Nigerians step up their gold medal tally, having won 2 gold at the 2022 Games in Birmingham.
The secret is very simple. It's early camping, hard work, teamwork, and putting everything together. The coaches, the athletes, the administration, us, we came up together. We had the plan. The plan was to see that we surpassed what we did in the last Commonwealth game in Birmingham. And so we started early. Even though we did not meet our projection, we had higher expectations. We have young athletes who are 13, 14, 15 years old whom we are currently grooming. In the last camping that we had, we invited all of them so that we can give them the taste of what it is to be in the national camp.
And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu reiterated that no ransom was paid for the release of the Oyo kidnapped victims, as the Olubadan of Ibadan land, Oba Rashidi Ladoja, described the rescue as Nigeria's anti-kidnapping turning point. And ahead of next year's general elections, Chief of Defense Training Rear Admiral Abolade Ogunleye reaffirmed the armed forces' commitment to safeguarding Nigeria's territorial integrity and democratic process. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Do have a good night.